All right, I'm back here with my good friend Mark Comerford. Mark, thanks again for doing this.
No problem.
After this, I think we're going to go ahead and get some rest for tomorrow's classes. We're going to talk about unstable base training. So there's some controversies and concepts floating around the industry right now. Some coaches say that unless you have an injured knee or an injured ankle, that there's really no added benefit to doing unstable base training. I personally still use Eric's pads. I think certain things like Fit discs, the Dynadiscs are a little too unstable, and those shoes are a little too unstable, but I'll get into that in another video. But I wanted to turn it over to Mark and have him give you some of his opinions as far as how to benefit uninjured, healthy athletes and whether they should or shouldn't use unstable base training.
Okay. Thanks, Nick. One of the things about unstable base training is, it isn't particularly functional. You don't function on something that's going to move very often unless you're on ice.
Right.
Okay, so we normally have good ground fixation, and we use that ground fixation to accelerate and decelerate and produce power and to hold ourselves steady and compete against other things in sport. One of the things about unstable base training, though, is that there are certain advantages we get from unstable base training that we don't get from other things. And one of the advantages is for the rehab. Reconditioning people from rehab back to sport. I think there's a real advantage here. Okay. One of the things about unstable base training is that when we work with an unstable base, muscles in the core generate greater eccentric function, eccentric activity. And so,
then both injured and uninjured.
Injured and uninjured. So if you have to try and control an unstable base, in the process of trying to control an unstable base, you're moving, but you are resisting the movement and creating greater eccentric functional training in the core. Now, one of the things that we know from a lot of the researchers out there is that the ability to protect ourselves from provocative movement or protect ourselves from hypermobile range or strain is to eccentrically resist movement. That's the whole principle of measuring and assessing for uncontrolled movement. And so using an unstable base, something to make it a little bit more functional, it's not normal function, but a little bit more functionally adaptive. We can use movement patterns and movement skills that we might use in sport on an unstable base, but we build in an element of increased eccentric core control. And that eccentric core control has a couple of advantages. And you get more of it from unstable base training than you do from normal fixed point where it's more concentric. If you want to generate more power, you do fixed base. You have a stable base to generate power from.
Right.
But the unstable base training gives us the advantage of increasing eccentric control, and particularly with rotation. Now, what we know from a lot of the research nowadays is that in the presence of chronic and recurrent musculoskeletal pain, particularly recurrent problems, we change the patterns, and the global stabilizers that provide rotary control of the core become down-regulated, and mobilizers become up-regulated.
Right.
And so one of the things we want is increase the up-regulation of the global stabilizers. Now that needs to be done in a low-threshold, non-fatiguing load environment, but it can also be transferred into a loaded environment, so long as we stay in the sub-maximal ranges of approximately between 40 to 60% MVC. I don't believe it's a good thing to try and do unstable base training with high loads of 70, 80, 90% of max. It's too dangerous and it's not particularly functional.
And I want to make sure everybody knows when he says MVC, it means maximum voluntary contraction. Okay, so and this I guess would apply to, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong. Whether you're injured or uninjured, you would not blend anything above 40% of MVC strength training with unstable base training.
I think the negatives are far outweigh the positives in that situation.
Yeah, we were just talking about that, and I've never done that. I separate my strength from unstable base training, and the old saying is, if you chase two rabbits, you'll never catch either.
Yeah.
And Mark, you seem to agree.
Exactly. Yeah.
So real quick, let's continue on with. Let's move past the rehab. We only got a few more minutes of footage here, and I want to get everybody to get the most out of this. A few quick reasons as well. When would you do unstable base training for a healthy athlete? When would you do that in a session if you're going to do speed and power and strength and all the things that we do?
I'd do it before a fatigue count. So I'd do it after I've done a warm-up. I'd do it as part of it, maybe even to break up some upper body loaded work and some lower body loaded work.
Like active recovery.
Active recovery, yeah, that would be a good time to put it in. But I wouldn't put it in after I'm totally burnt out, because it's going to be too hard to regain that control. But I think one of the other advantages for dealing with it, we recognise that one of the greatest risks in sport and in general life of getting injured is the unguarded movement.
Right.
You see it all the time. Now, if you're prepared to take a hit, you can prepare for it, fix yourself into the ground and embrace and take the hit. If you aren't prepared to take it because it's coming from you being blindsided, you take it from behind or whatever, okay, and you get hit from behind, you don't know it's coming. Once you hit, you then are the unstable base. You're totally unstable yourself. You've got your ground fixation's not working for you.
Great point.
And they are the biggest injuries that we deal with. They're the hard ones because you can't train for them. But maybe we can, because what unstable base training does, I believe, is help us prepare for recovery from those unguarded movements. So if we can train it in, we can actually teach people to recover better and maybe not do as much damage in those unguarded movements.
Fantastic. And I've always thought, to be honest, when I use my unstable base training, I will use it at the end of my session when my athletes are gassed.
Right.
And I figure, hey, well, that's the time you're going to be losing your balance and your coordination. Maybe it's time to do it.
Well,
but you think the opposite.
Well, if I'm doing the sub-max work, 40 to 60% of a fatiguing load.
Right.
Definitely before I fatigue out. But if I want to use it as the warm down, just to refacilitate the stabiliser system, then so long as it's in the low threshold range, in the totally non-fatiguing range of unstable base training. And to do that, you've got to make sure that you're on an unstable base you can control.